questions that you all have submitted. I tried to just combine them based on topic, not on content or anything else. But first, did you want to? You have to go first, so that means you didn't get to talk about it.
Well, if I could just comment on that. I've been an organizer most of my life before Congress, and I think of myself still as such. I've never seen such a mobilization. And it began in its intensity the day after the inauguration with the Women's March. And while it was multi-issue, without a doubt, I saw more beautiful designs of lady parts on slides. But the other reason why, I certainly agree that we need an incredibly intense mobilization around women's reproductive health, or around abortion, around Roe v. Wade. I am seeing more young women, women of color, really fierce, who, among other things, got me and Barbara Lee in the Congress to introduce a bill that would repeal the Hyde Amendment. This is the amendment that says that no federal funds, kind of a litany that we've been saying all the time, oh, don't worry, there's no federal funds going. We have 85 co-sponsors in the House of Representatives now, which is not totally insignificant. And I just think that women, there will be such an incredible fierceness. It'll probably, I mean, it's growing now, but when there's a nominee to the court, women are not going to go back. And I think you will see an outpouring like we've never seen before. Women remember before Roe. I mean, I have a button that says, Roe v. Wade wasn't the beginning of women having abortions. It was the end of women dying from abortions. And I really think that I see a lot of it now, but you will see more.
I think what's missing is exactly this last point, which is that there are women's movements saying we're in favor of choice, we're in favor of abortion. What's missing are the kind of powerful stories that change public opinion and change the justices' opinions in Roe about what it is like in a world in which abortion is illegal. That's what needs to come to the fore. That needs to be, that movies need to be made about this, TV shows need to be made about this, people need to tell their stories. It's become largely forgotten. And I think that's a critical part of what motivated people before and needs to motivate them now. To talk about, I'm all in favor of choice, that's great. But what really affects people is understanding what it's like to be blindfolded and picked up in an alley and driven to someplace by people you don't know and have them do this abortion and drop you off in another alley and have 200 women a year die from this. And that's what needs to be told.
I accept that, sure.
So let's go to a lighter topic. A topic that actually is the #1 topic out of your questions. A very insignificant issue, impeachment. So it's all worded differently, but a couple of different people wanted to know about impeachment and what the timeline would be and what it would look like. Is this possible? And what would this mean?
What do we need to do?
Well, I'll speak very briefly because I acknowledge that I'm on a panel of constitutional experts and a member of Congress. So my place is really, I think, just to say, having been asked this question many a time, I think the most important element is to understand two things. One is impeachment is a political process. It's not a legal process strictly, and therefore the only way a president gets impeached is because Congress decides that that's the right thing to do, and Congress is now in the hands of the Republicans. So until they think it's the right thing to do, it's not going to happen. Which doesn't mean that all of the variety of ethical violations, potential legal violations, the dangers that are raised to our national security by breaches of intelligence, by providing confidential intelligence to foreign and potentially enemy governments. All of those issues need to be explored. We need appropriate oversight. I think where our role comes in as an engaged electorate, as people who are active in protecting fundamental rights and liberties, is to continue to work to make sure that that oversight happens through whatever pressure we can put on to give support to good members of Congress and to put pressure on bad members of Congress to litigate, to do public education, to organize, to advocate, to be out there. And I think impeachment, that may happen, but that's not, I think, what should be our first concern. Our first concern should be rule of law in this country and making sure that we hold our government accountable.
If I could just comment, you know, Mike Pence has set up a new political action committee. Just thought I'd tell you. I don't know what that means in terms of what they think potentially could happen, and I've heard there's some people in government that are not Democrats looking at the 25th Amendment. So there are, and I don't think there's any question really that impeachable offenses have been committed. But Caroline is absolutely right. This is a political process. I am not really in favor of pushing the idea or the word of impeachment. Some of my colleagues are, but to support this process that is, as I said, I think, starting an unraveling of this administration. The question is when, and not if, I think when there is a tipping point. When will there be a tipping point? And there are a couple things, one very political. I think, for example, I think if we win this special election in Georgia, that could begin to scare the pants off some of my colleagues who have stuck with the administration and feeling that they may have to step out on their own now and separate themselves. And as more and more embarrassing things, the one element of this administration, first of all, it's not leaks. I mean, it is a torrent coming out of the White House. So we're finding out things more and more. There's obviously people within the administration who are willing to, let things out. And two, that Donald Trump himself is willing to throw the people, we haven't seen the family yet, but the people closest to him under the bus. So there's not a lot of traction for people who stand up and, yeah, my president, and we'll see how long Spicer, who, was just absolutely in praise of this foreign trip, and it was historical. He used it 6 times. It was historic. The accomplishments of his, he may be fired. The president, the vice president has been undercut time and again by the president, saying that there was a recommendation to fire Comey, and it turns out the president gets up and says on television, "Oh, that was all my idea." So they look foolish. So I really do think there will be a tipping point, and it's not necessarily helpful to keep talking about impeachment. The impeachment argument against impeachment goes this way. They couldn't win the election fair and square, I won, so they're going to figure out the device to get rid of me. This is all about this conspiracy.
Can I just add 2 things which I think largely build on Caroline's points. The first is that it's not just impeachment that is political. It is the popular response to impeachment that is political. Impeachment undermines the party that pushes for impeachment, in particular if it is a partisan process. The second point I think to make, if one looks at the polling data from Montana and elsewhere, one sees that the raft of things that we have been talking about, including the Russia scandal, including the physical assault by soon-to-be Representative Schakowsky's colleague, Mr. Gianforte, on the Guardian reporter, do not change people's preferences or their intentions to vote with respect to particular candidates, either Gianforte or President Trump.
No, let me just say, that actually a number of people called the election board to see if they could change their vote after the assault. 2/3 had already voted.
Although Gianforte got $100,000 in donations in the 24 hours after the assault. So, to my mind, there is a large question as to why there are so many of our colleagues, peers, neighbors, who do not believe in the value of civility, who do not believe in the idea of living with people of different races, colors, ethnicities, faiths, who are committed to a very, very different style of politics, a very, very different way of coexisting, or not coexisting, than all of the assumptions in the discussion in this room is predicated upon. And until one grapples with that, until one figures out how to talk to those people, to talk about impeachment to me seems to be not just politically wise, but politically suicidal.
I just want to add one thing to Aziz's point, which I think is absolutely on target. To say, though, that the ongoing conversation that has been had about the failings of this president to live up to his promises in a variety of areas has started to have an impact. So I think that the coupling of the strong and important oversight on rule of law issues with the aggressive discussion of policy matters that affect people where they live, like healthcare, is actually starting to have an impact. And there was a poll that I read, was either in the Washington Post or the New York Times, because that's what I read today. A Kaiser board looking at independent voters who had supported Donald Trump and seeing a very strong erosion in their support because of these, sort of failures to produce meaningful improvements in their well-being. They tend to be sort of lower income white folks, and they're not seeing it come through for them. So I think this is all part of that same discussion. It is politics is both congressional and popular, and all of those things come together wherever they lead us. Hopefully, it'll lead to a better place.
I think there's another reason to be cautious about impeachment. Donald Trump has managed to do some serious damage, no doubt, but relative to the damage that he might have done, it's relatively little. And he's essentially tied himself up, right? We talked about the litigation over the executive orders, for example, where he's just made mistake after mistake after mistake in almost what seems to be an almost deliberate effort to undermine his own agenda. If we have a President Pence, we'll have somebody who is competent and conservative. And I think that that's much more frightening in some ways.
Let me just say, I think were that to happen, that the administration will have been so undermined that, and it'll be closer to the next presidential election, that there is no chance that Pence could get reelected. But I don't think that, and let's wait, Pence was the transition chair. And I'm not so sure that this whole Russian entanglement won't bring him to the forefront too. So
for our next question, one person asks, how do we stay engaged when the rhetoric is so divisive and people seem to believe whatever source they receive their information from without checking credibility? This is evidently written by someone who sees my father's Facebook post.
Well, let me just say, I have not seen that. I just want to go back to what I said earlier, that I have never seen such a mobilization. People wanting, I go to the Jewel and people come up to me, what can I do? Just tell me, what can I do? And there are things, a lot of things that people can do. I've even got some people from Evanston that are going to be going down to Georgia to volunteer in that election. People are doing phone banks. They're getting more involved in their local elections, which have turned out to be very important, for example, on whether or not communities should opt out of the minimum wage ordinance from the county. The level of engagement is just remarkable to me. You set up space for, as an organizer, you set up a smaller room than you think you know, people are going to come and you make calls and then you make recalls. And now, you know, you set up a room for 100 and 400 people show up. So I'm not feeling that. I'm feeling more that people are just looking for what to do. A new group every day. We've got Indivisible, that organization that started online. Now they're hiring staff. They've got, I don't know, 30,000 individual chapters, something like that, all over the country. It's remarkable.
So,
Yeah, I'd have to pick up on that just to say that, you know, as you mentioned, Amy, Knoxville is not our only new chapter. We've
that's
had
why I
many.
have the bags under my eyes.
Yes, exactly. So Amy has been working very hard, as has Megan, in capturing all the energy of the people who are coming to ACS, both to join, to start new chapters, but also because they want to participate in something. So we're connecting them with some of these new groups that are engaged in litigation. We're connecting them with research projects that need to be done. We're finding people in these litigating groups or on the Hill or other legislators who need assistance in thinking through public policy issues. So there's so many ways to connect, and I think running for office is a really important one. We're also really interested in encouraging people in the ACS network to think about the legal offices. I think progressives often consider somehow inappropriate to run for DA or think about AG or run for a judgeship. But we really need good people in those positions, because if you really want to have fair and impartial justice, you need to have people who understand the Constitution's values. And so I think that's a really important piece of this, is for us as progressives not to turn away from those positions as prosecutors potentially, because you know, you need a good defense and you need a good prosecution to make a good system of justice. So I encourage people to think about that.
Let me just say one other thing. You know, my new colleague may have gotten $100,000 overnight, but the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, I mean, the donations that are going to, and the involvement in great organizations has exponentially increased.
So if you don't want to necessarily run for office, say you have an hour today, what can you do that actually makes a difference?
I'm sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
You know, I'm sure that all the lawyers in this room know or are acquainted with 5, 10 people who are undocumented. They're the people who you interact with at the grocery store, perhaps, people who are maybe your doorman or your doorman's relatives. And you can take a moment and ask them, do any of you need help with, for example, preparing affidavits that you might need if your or a family member is deported? And there's a question of what happens to the children, right? There are lots of things that one can do that are of that kind, that are immediately of assistance to people who don't have other means of assistance.
And I'd say one thing that we're sort of encouraging our members to do is to think about your friends who are more conservative and start talking to them about, you know, if there were more attacks on judges, would you be interested in speaking out as a joint liberal and conservative to sort of defend the judiciary? And start building those bridges. I think that's a really important thing to do, as well as think about your friends who are on the liberal side who aren't members of ACS yet.
There are a group of students at the Chicago Law School who created this program, which is really interesting. It's a platform. The idea of it is that basically you sign up for it, it will track what you read online, and it will send you the flip side, the kind of things that you read. And the idea is to give people a much better sense of the other perspective. And that's what we need in part right now, on both sides is what we need right now. Because people have so much fall into their own bubbles that they don't understand where the other side's coming from. So devices like that, ideas like that, I think are really important for the society and for democracy.
That's interesting. One of the things I do at John Marshall's co-director of Human Rights Clinic, and exciting phenomenon after the election, we got a number of new clients, but we also got a number of new volunteer attorneys and a lot of student interest in the clinic. One of the things that we do is represent Syrians in Chicago and indeed around the country in their asylum claims, and had a lot of new volunteer pro bono attorney interest in working with us in those cases. among some of the other human rights work that we do in opposition to things that the Trump administration is trying to do. And so just a plug, if you're looking for volunteer opportunities, talk to me.
And since they gave me a microphone, I feel like I should say this. ACS actually has expanded to the point where we brought somebody on who one part of her job is connecting attorneys with pro bono opportunities. And so if you need volunteers for things, let us know, and Ashley's happy to help you find people. If you find yourself interested in some of these projects, Ashley's happy to help connect you with things. That a lot of them are research projects that you can do from wherever you are, and other times that she may know of something in Chicago specifically that's looking for more help. And one thing that we do across the country is Constitution in the Classroom, where attorneys will go and teach an hour class at your middle school, high school, whatever. And we have all these different curricula that have been organized on different parts of the Constitution. So some people will go to the same class a few times, and other times people will just go into one class once. And it's all online. We mail you a box of constitutions. You email a teacher that you know or whatever. We'll help you find a school. Yes, there you go. You go do that. And this year, actually, something that Megan and I came up with in like 20 minutes once, and it turned out really well, was it's called Love Our Constitution. And the idea was we're encouraging people to talk to their friends and neighbors about the Constitution. So not just to high school and elementary school kids. And some folks in Chicago, two people did one in the basement of a yarn shop. Other people went and did it with their kids' Boy Scout troops. People did it at synagogues and churches. So that's something too. If you're not so sure you want to hang out with high school kids or smaller kids, you want to do it with your friends and neighbors. That's another program that's super easy. You let us know you want to do it. We mail you the constitutions and help you out. So those are also things super easy. So I think we have time for one more question. Some of these are so depressing, but okay. All right. One criticism I hear of the court's rulings, especially on the travel ban, generally but not entirely from the right, is that the courts are overstepping in ways that will be distorting of separation of powers and presidential authority for a long time to come. Similar critiques apply to leaks from national security personnel. This is debatable, of course, but assuming there is in fact some overreach, what is your response?
I think the claim that there is overreach in the court's rulings on the travel ban or otherwise is based upon an assumption that the president should have a broad scope of discretion for taking actions in relation to national security or foreign policy. This is an argument, the argument for deference, is one that some of our colleagues have made, and it's an argument that in part is parasitic on the constitutional text, but really is a claim about the comparative institutional competence of the executive branch. It's a claim that the executive branch has more information, we can act better, and we don't need to worry about its motives because the president has essentially good motives because he or she is looking forward to the next election and is motivated to protect the nation as a consequence. Now, what I find both amusing and troubling is that when confronted with countervailing evidence that refutes the assumption behind the claim of deference, the response of critics is to double down on the claim of deference. It's not to say, oh, I may have been mistaken, there may be more variance in the quality of executive action in the national security and foreign affairs domain than I previously thought. And therefore we need to rethink the approach the courts take. The approach is to say, no, the real risk here is not the people who are immediately falling under the spikes of executive action, the people whose rights are lost, the people whose families are torn apart. It's the threat to the executive itself, which I find a wonderfully perverse and academic response.
The other thing that's kind of perverse in these discussions is that the theory of standing and lack of deference to the executive in these matters borrows directly from the opponents to actions that President Obama took, including DAPA, for example, right? And Texas's lawsuit, joined by 26 states against the administration for implementing DAPA. Opposition to the Trump administration simply borrowed a page from that playbook. I find this very exciting because I think that it reinvigorates a judiciary that has lost ground in the separation of powers in the Roberts and the Rehnquist era. So I'm glad to see a reinvigorated judiciary that's willing to accept standing and challenge claims of deference against the executive in these areas. I hope that this will continue.
So we have about 2 minutes. Any closing thoughts anybody wants to share?
I just wanted to say one thing about the Trump voters, and surely among them is these kinds of description that you made. But I think Caroline was getting to the point I want to make. There are a lot of people in the United States of America for whom this economy is not working. Who think to themselves, this is not working for me. And unfortunately, they saw Hillary Clinton not as a change maker, but as someone who was not going to bring about a better life for them, right or wrong. That's how they saw it. And they thought to themselves, I'm going to give this guy a chance, and we're willing, in many cases, I think, to overlook some of the embarrassing actions of this president because they felt, well, he'll just turn things upside down. But there is a point at which he has to deliver. And I think the example you gave of the healthcare betrayal, which people are, this is very personal. This is not like Russia. This is very personal. When 23 million Americans look at that and say, I think this is me. This is my family. This is my children. This is pre-existing conditions. When they see that, and I saw it in the budget hearing, that this administration argues that children don't need to be fed in school because there's no evidence that it helps them learn better. When the Appalachian and the Delta, the Mississippi Delta economic development funds are cut from the Trump budget, these are the very people that he pledged to support. I think there is going to be a growing sense of betrayal, of a failure to deliver. Looking at the administration populated by Goldman Sachs, by millionaires, no release of his tax returns and the obvious conflicts of interest. I really do think that this has to build, but it is building. And we're helping, there's a lot of activity to help push this along. So I think those conversations can happen with people who voted for Donald Trump. AARP, most people between 50 and 64 voted for Donald Trump. 65 and older voted for Donald Trump. And now we see this pledge of nothing happening to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid being betrayed, and the AARP speaking to its 38 million members about how you didn't vote for this. I think those things are going to gain more and more traction as their lives get worse and not better.
On that note, so I have to tell you about 2 more things. You should plan to come to the ACS Chicago Learner Chapter. They have tons of great programming in the summer, but in particular the annual Legal Legends Luncheon on June 19th. We'll be honoring luminaries of the Chicago legal profession, including Carolyn Shapiro.